Well, hello there. Welcome back to the Pacific War channel, where we cover the entire history of the Asia-Pacific War from 1937 all the way up to 1945, and all the major events that led up to it. The Warlord Era was coming to an end, as Chiang Kai-Shek's northern expedition was consolidating China proper. Zhang Zuolin stands defiant with his stronghold of Manchuria and the backing of Japan. However, everything was about to change. Please leave a like, subscribe, and leave a comment on this video as it helps with the algorithm. Stating all of this episode is the Huanggutun Incident. After the Russo-Japanese War of 1904 to 1905, Japan had developed the Kwantung Army, a special security force established to protect the Kwantung territory. This territory was along the South Manchurian Railway extending from Mukden to Changchun. They had a lease for 99 years, but Japan, being Japan, well, she sought more. Manchuria was always the great aim of the Japanese Empire. It was the breadbasket of Asia, a place of numerous untapped mineral resources and land for Japan's booming population to emigrate to. For the Japanese military, Manchuria was seen as a buffer state between Japan and her greatest enemy, the USSR. For Manchuria to fall under the control of the USSR, or even that of nationalist China, well, that was simply unacceptable. Hey everyone, I just wanted to let you know I now have a Patreon account found at www.patreon.com/thepacificwarchannel. Over there you can find exclusive Patreon episodes and podcasts based on suggestions from patrons, and other benefits like early access to all of my content, live hangouts, your name in the end credits, and much, much more, so please go check it out. When the Warlord Era kicked off, Japan began supporting the Fengtian clique to harness influence over Manchuria. Now, the Fengtian clique was run by the Tiger of Manchuria, Zhang Zuolin. Japan extended their hand to Zhang Zuolin, offering military arms, advisors, and would even get involved now and then to suppress pesky uprisings, like that of General Guo Songling. Failure. In return, Zhang Zuolin kept the bandits at bay, allowed Japan to extensively invest in Manchuria, and protected her precious South Manchurian Railway. Times were good for the Tiger and his Japanese allies. Well, until they weren't. Even with Japan's backing, the Warlord Era seemed to be coming to an end, with a nationalist victory in the form of Chiang Kai-Shek's northern expedition. Chiang Kai-Shek was closing in on Manchuria. He had just beat the Jade Marshal, Wu Peifu, Sun Chuanfang, alongside countless other warlords. Most of China proper now lay in his hands. To make matters even worse, good old Zhang Zuolin really only wanted to consolidate and expand his own territory, which, for the most part, he did. He held Manchuria. Thus, Zhang Zuolin began to cheat on Miss Japan by seeing other people, such as Britain and her rival, the United States. The Kwantung Army tried to rein Zhang Zuolin back into the fold. When he was losing badly to Chiang Kai-Shek in 1928, they tried to force him to retreat back into Manchuria. But he stubbornly stayed in Beijing fighting on. Zhang Zuolin continuously rejected Japanese demands, excluded his Japanese military advisors, and rejected requests to disarm and allow Japan further economic privileges in Manchuria. Zhang Zuolin was receiving a lot of heat from the rest of China, who were using propaganda campaigns labeling him as a Japanese stooge, which he really was. Thus the old Tiger was trying to shake off the Japanese, and they became increasingly angry about that. Now, 1920s Japan was a time of much change. The kind of change one gets when they start watching too much Alex Jones.
I will eat your ass. I will eat my neighbors. But I'm literally looking at my neighbors now and going, I'm ready to hang them up and gut them and skin them and chop them up. And you know what? I'm ready. My daughters aren't starving to death. I'll eat my neighbors.
Japan was hit with a 1923 Great Kanto earthquake, which was so damaging she almost moved her capital. 142,800 people died, 38,000 of which were incinerated by a firestorm after taking shelter at the Rikugun Honjo Hifukuso. 570,000 homes were destroyed, 1.9 million people were left homeless, and 1 billion, that's around 16 billions worth today, of damages were incurred. This contributed to the Showa financial crisis, an economic bubble that burst shortly after World War I, leading to an economic depression. The situation was so bad, they even created earthquake bonds, which turned out to be a terrible decision when rumors sprang up that the bonds were worthless, causing people to panic sell.
What do you mean the bank is out of money?
Insolvent? You only have enough cash for the next 3 customers!
So yeah, Japan was going through a rough patch. Alongside her economic troubles, Japan's military was certainly undergoing some changes. One fateful man named Kanji Ishiwara was becoming a firebrand amongst his colleagues. The best way to describe Kanji Ishiwara is, imagine making Alex Jones a senior officer in the United States military today, where he begins creating a cult of followers proclaiming an apocalyptic war was on the horizon. And the only way to prepare for it was to seize a large swath of land. Also, add a touch of Buddhism to that.
I want war. Give me your attacks. Everything. God wants me to wage war. God told me, no more games. War! Ah! The real thing. War! 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 You want war against our children? You want war against God? You will get war! War!
Yes, that was the second Alex Jones joke that I just made. I'm done now, sorry. By the way, if you want to hear more about Kanji Ishiwara, please check out my Patreon for a full episode on how he got Japan to invade Manchuria. Long story short, Kanji Ishiwara had a theory about a final war, pitting Japan against America. He drew his conclusions on his understanding of military history and Nichiren Buddhism. In order to prepare for the final war, Japan needed to seize Manchuria. Kanji Ishiwara lectured at the Staff Army College and drew an enormous following, so much so, the Manchurian problem became an obsession amongst the military. Interesting note about Ishiwara, he was gravely concerned with not going to war with China. Yes, in retrospect that is quite funny. He believed China's duty was to help modernize China, to ally with her to face off against the West. Now, as you can imagine, the Kwantung Army leadership became deeply interested in Ishiwara. He was speaking their kind of language.
It's free real estate.
Now in 1927, Tanaka Giichi became Prime Minister of Japan and began demanding railway and mining rights, to set up new factories and to rent out land from Zhang Zuolin. This was met with large-scale protests. 100,000 people demonstrated in Shenyang, calling for Tanaka's cabinet to fall. Zhang Zuolin rejected the demands and publicly said, "I, Zhang Zuolin, am Chinese. I am at odds with the Japanese. Japan is trying to invade Northeast China. I, the king of the Northeast, will never allow it." Bold words, Old Marshal. Bold words.
And yet we let Japan come in and dump everything right into our markets and everything. It's not free trade. If you ever go to Japan right now and try to sell something, forget about it, Oprah. Just forget about it.
In June of 1927, an Eastern Regions Conference was formed by Premier Tanaka Giichi to formulate Japan's policy towards China and Manchuria. The conference came to no real conclusion on the matter, blurring any idea of what sort of action should be taken. The Kwantung Army staff were greatly frustrated by their military leadership's inability to take action. A radical group within the Kwantung Army emerged, headed by Colonel Komoto Daisaku, who believed they needed to eliminate Zhang Zuolin because his usefulness had run its course and a new puppet was needed. Now in 1928, Chiang Kai-Shek led an offensive against Beijing and Tianjin. Zhang Zuolin's troops were fighting desperately to hold the region. Prime Minister Tanaka called in foreign representatives on May the 17th and explained Japan's strategy going forward. He wanted Zhang Zuolin to withdraw from Beijing, and he would be permitted to enter Manchuria. But if he chose to continue fighting in Beijing, or make a fighting withdrawal back to Manchuria, Japan would prevent both Zhang Zuolin and the Nationalists from entering Manchuria. Tanaka was under immense pressure from the radicals amongst the Kwantung Army officers, calling for Japan to seize Manchuria. Tanaka, however, held firm, informing the Kwantung Army Zhang Zuolin would be allowed to remain in power and Japan would not forcefully occupy Manchuria.
独立した新しい満州が誕生するんです。しかし、
Well, Colonel Komoto had had enough with both Zhang Zuolin and the Imperial Army leadership, and he took matters into his own hands. Zhang Zuolin boarded a train on the evening of June the 3rd, 1928, going from Beijing to Shenyang via the Jingfeng Railway.
No! 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 No!
The line was guarded by Fengtian troops, except for a bridge a few miles east of Huanggutun train station. Colonel Sasaki Toichi alleged that after the Jinan incident, he gave Komoto the idea for assassinating Zhang Zuolin via sabotage of a railway line. Komoto ordered a subordinate, Captain Genyo Tomiya, to find a place where the train car bearing Zhang Zuolin could be blown up. Genyo found the bridge point and enlisted other Kwantung officers, such as a major who was in charge of the guards in the area and a demolition expert who installed the explosives. Komoto also hired 3 dissatisfied Manchurians to be close by the explosion site. If Zhang Zuolin survived the explosion, they were to rush over to his car and kill him. Sapper First Lieutenant Sadatoshi Fuji planted the explosive charges along the track, which he exploded at 5:23 a.m. on June the 4th as Zhang Zuolin's train passed over the bridge. Zhang Zuolin was sitting at a mahjong table when his car blew up, sending a steel fragment into his nose which would kill him hours later. After the incident, Komoto's gang stabbed 2 out of the 3 Manchurians trying to pin the blame on them, but the third got away rushing straight to the headquarters of Zhang Zuolin's son, Jiang Shuliang. Jiang Shuliang kept his father's death a secret for over 2 weeks while he secretly spoke with Chiang Kai-Shek, striking a deal. Then Jiang Shuliang officially took his father's mantle as ruler of Manchuria on June the 21st, but knowing a public announcement of his father's assassins would cause a violent reaction from Japan, he chose to keep the peace. Oh, and by keeping the peace, he made sure to execute 2 of his father's pro-Japanese subordinates, who may have been implicated in the assassination. The Kwantung Army leadership were caught completely off guard. They had been grooming one of Zhang Zuolin's close confidants and great generals, Yang Yuqing. He was their greatest pro-Japanese Fengtian leader prospect to replace Zhang Zuolin so they could retain control over Manchuria. However, Komoto's radical group had performed the assassination without proper approval of the Imperial General Headquarters nor from his own Kwantung Army leadership. The Kwantung Army was unable to rally forces together to take advantage of the chaos because there simply was no chaos. Jiang Shuliang had made sure of that. Even with Jiang Shuliang as the new ruler, the Kwantung Army still probably hoped that he would prove to be more pliant than his father, as he had a reputation as being a playboy and he was a rampant opium addict. But murdering his father proved to have backfired spectacularly, for he immediately switched allegiances from Japan to Chiang Kai-Shek in December of 1928. He even got off the opium with the help of his friend, journalist William Donald. Way to go, Japan.
Shit.
Tanaka was outraged when he found out who was responsible and resolved to punish Komoto and his radical gang, but some of his fellow cabinet members sympathized with their cause and began to oppose holding the assassins responsible. Army Minister Shirakawa Yoshinori and Railway Minister Ogawa led a coalition against Tanaka, claiming his actions would harm the imperial house, worsen sino-Japanese relations, and undermine Japan's special interests in China. Oh, and of course, the cabinet did not want to be held accountable for basically allowing the radicals to do what they did. In the world of politics, we call this one, kids, throwing someone under the bus.
And knowing is half the battle.
Likewise, Emperor Hirohito was outraged, immediately calling for those responsible to be punished, which forced an internal investigation of the matter. Tanaka gave a formal report of what occurred to Emperor Hirohito, stating he intended to court-martial the assailants, purge the army, and re-establish discipline. Well, Tanaka would be informed later that the emperor refused to meet with him any further, leaving Tanaka alone to face the entire army, basically meaning he was being dismissed.
You are done.
Tanaka resigned, and the cabinet covered up the incident, treating it as an internal administrative matter. Emperor Hirohito accepted the army's intention to lie to the public about the incident and give the culprits minor administrative punishments. Thus, Hirohito saved his own face, but also allowed the Kwantung Army to defy the Tokyo government, something that would not bite his ass later on. Colonel Komodo was forced to resign his post as senior staff officer, and he would be succeeded by Lieutenant Colonel Ishiwara. Komodo and Ishiwara would work very closely before he left his station, making sure the next steps to solve the Manchurian problem were met. Well, alright, let's just go over everything we've now just learnt. Zhang Zuolin refused to give up the fight against Chiang Kai-Shek's northern expedition. Japan sought a better partner to secure her interests in Manchuria. Radical Kwantung Army officers took matters in their own hands, killing Zhang Zuolin and trying to replace him with a puppet. Everything simply went to shit, and now China was unified. Really hope you liked this episode, and please hit that like and subscribe button, and leave a comment as it helps with the algorithm. This has been the Pacific War Channel, over and out.